A luxurious hotel in Long Beach made a huge mistake when it turned away global icon Snoop Dogg. What they didn't know? The very next day, he would return, not as a guest, but as the new owner, ready to transform their world forever. Before we dive into this powerful story, comment below where you're watching from today. And if you're inspired by Snoop Dogg's incredible journey of resilience and change, don't forget to hit subscribe. The rain poured in steady torrents, drumming against the sleek black SUV as it rolled into the circular driveway of the Sunrise Imperial Hotel. The golden light from the towering chandeliers spilled out onto the rain-slick pavement, creating a luminous aura that hinted at the grandeur inside. For most, the hotel represented a haven, an oasis of comfort for travelers passing through the bustling city of Long Beach, California. But for Snoop Dogg, the night was about to unfold quite differently. Stepping out of his SUV, Snoop adjusted the collar of his iconic blue and gold jacket, his tall frame cutting an imposing silhouette against the backdrop of the rain. At 6'4", his presence was commanding, yet his expression was one of quiet composure. He took in the sight of the hotel's lavish entrance, the scent of freshly cut roses and faint espresso wafting out to meet him as he stepped inside. His polished shoes echoed softly against the marble floor as he approached the reception desk with his signature calm, easygoing demeanor. The receptionist, a young man with perfectly styled blonde hair and a name tag that read Alex, barely glanced up as Snoop arrived. Alex's fingers hovered over the keyboard, typing deliberately and slowly as if each keystroke required immense effort. Snoop waited patiently before offering a warm smile. "Good evening," Snoop said, his deep voice carrying a hint of warmth and fatigue. "I'd like a room for the night. My flight got delayed, and I need a place to stay before heading out tomorrow." Alex paused, then glanced up with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm sorry, sir," he replied, his tone polite but insincere. "We're fully booked tonight." Snoop glanced around the lobby. It wasn't bustling with activity, and the soft ding of an elevator announced the arrival of a single guest. He leaned slightly forward, maintaining his smile. "Fully booked?" he asked, his tone measured. "Not even a single room?" Alex's lips curled into a thin smile. "That's correct, sir. We don't have any availability." Before Snoop could respond, the revolving doors spun open, and a middle-aged couple entered the lobby, their suitcases rolling behind them. Alex's demeanor shifted instantly. His smile widened, and his tone took on a honeyed charm. "Welcome to the Sunrise Imperial," he greeted the couple enthusiastically. "Do you have a reservation?" The man shook his head. "No, but we're hoping you might have something available," he said. "Not a problem at all," Alex chirped, his fingers flying across the keyboard. In mere moments, he produced a room key and handed it to the couple with a courteous nod. "Enjoy your stay." Snoop stood motionless, his calm mask slipping ever so slightly. Clearing his throat, he caught Alex's attention once more. "I thought you said you were fully booked," Snoop said evenly, his gaze unwavering. Alex's eyes flickered with a momentary hint of panic before he recovered. I meant we don't have anything that would suit your needs, sir," he replied, his voice a touch defensive. Snoop felt the weight of the moment settle over him. This wasn't about availability, nor was it a mistake. It was something uglier, a judgment rooted in prejudice. Yet, Snoop didn't react. His years in the music and business industries had taught him the value of restraint. Without another word, he straightened his posture, his expression unreadable. "Thank you for your time," he said calmly. Turning on his heel, he strode out of the hotel and back into the rain. The cold droplets stung as they splattered against his face, but Snoop's mind was alight with clarity. He stood beneath the hotel's awning, the rhythmic patter of rain on the canopy above filling the silence. Pulling out his phone, he scrolled through a list of nearby hotels, but his attention remained fixed on the revolving doors behind him. A quiet, nagging thought refused to leave him. Something about the encounter lingered like a faint scent that wouldn't dissipate. Snoop leaned casually against a marble pillar, just out of view of the lobby, and decided to observe. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, but he trusted his instincts. It didn't take long for his suspicions to be confirmed. A young man in his 20s, dressed in cargo pants and a hoodie, strolled into the hotel, his backpack slung low over one shoulder. Snoop watched as the man approached Alex with the same request he had made only minutes earlier. A room for the night. Although Snoop couldn't hear their exchange, he didn't need to. Alex's exaggerated nods and beaming smile said everything. Within moments, the young man was handed a key card with no hesitation, no excuses, and no delays. Snoop's lips pressed into a firm line. It wasn't an oversight. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was intentional. The sting of rejection burned, but it was quickly replaced by something sharper. Determination. For a moment, Snoop considered confronting Alex right there in the lobby, calling out his hypocrisy for everyone to see. But years of navigating a world filled with doubters and naysayers had taught him an important lesson. There was a time to speak and a time to act. Tonight, action was the better course. Sliding back into his car, Snoop drove away, the hotel's golden lights fading into the rearview mirror. Yet the seeds of an idea had already begun to take root in his mind. This wasn't just about him. It was about everyone who had ever faced the quiet, insidious rejection that came without a voice or a platform to challenge it. As the windshield wipers danced rhythmically against the rain, Snoop resolved that this would not end there. The Sunrise Imperial Hotel might have rejected him, but they had no idea just who they were dealing with. Snoop Dogg strode into the brightly lit lobby of the Sunrise Imperial Hotel, the warmth of the golden chandeliers contrasting sharply with the cold rain outside. His steps were measured, deliberate, as his polished shoes clicked softly against the marble tiles. The air carried the subtle scent of fresh roses, blended with a faint hint of espresso from the lounge nearby. The space exuded elegance, designed to impress anyone who walked through its doors. Bookmark. At the far end of the lobby, the reception desk stood gleaming under the lights. Behind it, a young man named Alex managed the front desk. Alex's appearance was carefully curated. Blonde hair slicked back neatly, a fitted blazer without a single wrinkle, and a polished smile that seemed as professional as it was mechanical. His name tag gleamed, proclaiming him as the guest relations supervisor. Snoop approached the desk, his presence immediately noticeable. At 6'4", he towered over most, his aura commanding yet approachable. He adjusted his signature blue and gold jacket, his movements calm and precise. With his trademark smile in place, he leaned slightly onto the counter. "Good evening," Snoop greeted warmly, his voice smooth, yet carrying a hint of the fatigue from a delayed flight. "I need a room for the night. My flight's been held up, and I just need a spot to crash before heading out in the morning." Alex glanced up briefly, his expression almost imperceptibly shifting. There was no mistaking the flicker of recognition in his eyes as he realized who was standing before him, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. Instead of engaging further, he returned his attention to the computer in front of him. His fingers moved lazily across the keyboard, the soft clacking sounds filling the silence. "I'm sorry, sir," Alex finally said, his tone polite but devoid of any genuine apology. "We're fully booked tonight." Snoop raised an eyebrow, glancing over his shoulder. The lobby was far from bustling. Only a few chairs in the lounge area were occupied, and the elevator chimed faintly as it opened to reveal a single guest stepping out. "Fully booked?" Snoop repeated, his tone light but probing. "Not even one room available?" Alex's lips curved into a faint, almost condescending smile. "That's correct, sir. There's nothing available." Snoop studied Alex for a moment. His calm, laid-back demeanor remained, but behind it, his mind was working rapidly. Something about the interaction felt off, like a note slightly out of tune in an otherwise harmonious melody. But he decided not to press further, for now. "All right," Snoop replied smoothly, taking a step back. "Thanks for your time." Just as he was about to turn, the revolving doors at the entrance spun open. A middle-aged couple walked in, their suitcases rolling noisily across the floor. The man wore a slightly rumpled suit, and the woman had a scarf draped elegantly over her shoulders. Their faces carried the faint lines of exhaustion from travel, but they perked up as they approached the desk. "Good evening." Alex greeted them brightly, his smile widening in a way it hadn't for Snoop. "Welcome to the Sunrise Imperial. Do you have a reservation with us tonight?" The man shook his head. "No, we're hoping you might have something available." Alex's fingers danced across the keyboard with an efficiency that hadn't been present moments earlier. "Not a problem at all," he said cheerfully. "Let me check for you." Snoop remained where he stood, his gaze fixed on the scene unfolding before him. He watched as Alex's demeanor shifted entirely. There was no hesitation, no scripted excuses. Within seconds, Alex produced a key card and handed it to the couple with a courteous nod. "Enjoy your stay," Alex said, his tone dripping with enthusiasm. The couple thanked him and made their way toward the elevators, their footsteps fading as they disappeared down the hall. Snoop's calm mask slipped ever so slightly. He cleared his throat, drawing Alex's attention back to him. "I thought you said you were fully booked," Snoop said, his voice even but firm. For a brief moment, Alex's practiced smile faltered. There was a flicker of unease in his eyes before he quickly composed himself. I meant, we don't have anything that would suit your needs," he stammered, his words coming out less confidently than before. Snoop didn't miss the change in Alex's tone. He could feel the weight of the unspoken truth settling over the interaction. This wasn't about availability or last-minute bookings. It was something far less excusable, something rooted in prejudice. But instead of reacting, Snoop straightened his posture and took a step back. "Got it," he said simply, his voice betraying none of the frustration he felt. "You have a good night." Without another glance, he turned and walked away, the soft thud of his shoes against the marble floor echoing faintly in the quiet lobby. The revolving doors spun open again, and the cold rain greeted him as he stepped outside. Standing beneath the hotel's awning, Snoop took a moment to collect himself. The sting of rejection wasn't new to him. He had faced his share of challenges in an industry that often judged first and asked questions later. But this felt different. This wasn't just about him. It was about the principle of fairness, about standing up against subtle injustices that others might not have the voice or power to challenge. He pulled out his phone, scrolling absently through a list of nearby hotels. Yet, his thoughts remained fixated on the Sunrise Imperial and the interaction that had just taken place. The image of Alex's fake smile, the swift service offered to others, and the way his own request had been dismissed replayed in his mind like a loop. For a brief moment, Snoop considered walking back inside and confronting Alex directly. He could call out the hypocrisy, demand an explanation, and make his dissatisfaction known. But years of experience had taught him that there was a time to speak and a time to act. Tonight, action was the better choice. As the rain continued to fall, Snoop slipped into his car, his resolve hardening with each passing second. He wouldn't let this slide. Not for himself, and not for anyone else who had been dismissed, overlooked, or quietly rejected. The Sunrise Imperial had no idea what it had just set in motion. The rain was still coming down in rhythmic sheets as Snoop stood outside the Sunrise Imperial Hotel, his hands resting in the pockets of his jacket. The cold drizzle soaked the edges of his shoulders and dampened his hair, but he hardly noticed. His thoughts lingered on what he had just experienced. Snoop's smile had remained steady throughout the encounter with Alex, his demeanor calm, almost detached. Years of navigating complex situations in the music industry and business world had taught him the art of composure. Anger, he knew, was energy wasted if not channeled effectively. But the gnawing sense of unfairness was hard to ignore. As he stood there, another traveler arrived at the hotel. The young man was in his early 20s, wearing a hoodie and cargo pants, a well-worn backpack slung over one shoulder. He looked like a typical budget-conscious traveler, tired but hopeful as he approached the front desk. Snoop instinctively leaned back against a marble pillar just out of sight, watching quietly. The scene unfolded almost exactly as he had anticipated. The traveler made his request, and Alex's entire demeanor shifted once again. His smile broadened, and his tone turned warm and welcoming, as if he were speaking to an old friend. Snoop couldn't hear their words, but the body language was enough. Alex nodded enthusiastically, typing rapidly into the computer, his actions efficient and deliberate. Within moments, he handed the young man a room key, his expression one of practiced hospitality. The traveler thanked him and walked off toward the elevators, his backpack swaying gently as he disappeared around the corner. Snoop's chest tightened. Any lingering doubts about the nature of the earlier rejection were now gone. This wasn't a misunderstanding or an error in booking, it was intentional. The realization settled over him like a weight, heavy but clarifying. He briefly considered marching back inside to confront Alex. The thought of calling him out in front of the lobby's other guests and staff was tempting. He imagined the satisfaction of watching Alex's composed mask crumble under the pressure of being exposed. But Snoop held back. Years of experience had taught him that impulsive reactions rarely led to lasting solutions. Instead, he drew a deep breath, letting the cool rain hit his face as he straightened his posture. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips, not the warm, approachable smile he had given Alex, but a knowing one. He wasn't going to let this moment define him. He had faced worse obstacles and emerged stronger every time. This was no different. Sliding his phone from his pocket, Snoop scrolled through his contacts, half distracted. He briefly looked up nearby hotels, considering booking a room elsewhere. But his mind kept circling back to the Sunrise Imperial, to Alex's thinly veiled prejudice, and to the other guests who had been welcomed with open arms. This wasn't just about him, Snoop realized. It wasn't about the inconvenience of finding another hotel or the sting of rejection. It was about the principle. How many others had walked through those same doors only to be met with the same treatment? How many had quietly accepted it, internalizing the rejection and moving on without the means to push back? Snoop leaned back against the pillar, letting his thoughts settle. Confrontation wasn't the answer. Not yet, anyway. If he wanted to make a real impact, something lasting and meaningful, he would need a plan. The rain continued to fall steadily, the sound soothing against the tension in his mind. Snoop watched as a few more guests arrived at the hotel, each one greeted warmly by Alex or another staff member. None of them seemed to face the barriers he had encountered. Finally, Snoop pushed off the pillar and walked to his car. The sleek black SUV had a comforting familiarity, the interior dry and cool as he settled into the driver's seat. He sat there for a moment, the windshield wipers moving rhythmically as they cleared away the rain. As he stared at the glowing lights of the Sunrise Imperial reflected in the wet pavement, an idea began to take shape. It wasn't about anger or revenge. It was about setting an example, creating a story that would resonate far beyond this one rainy night. Snoop's phone buzzed with a notification, pulling him back to the moment. He ignored it, focusing instead on the growing determination within him. This was bigger than a personal slight. It was an opportunity to challenge a flawed system, to stand up not just for himself, but for anyone who had ever felt dismissed or devalued. Turning the key in the ignition, Snoop guided the SUV out of the driveway. The hotel's lights faded into the background as he merged onto the quiet streets of Long Beach. The rain streaked across the windshield, blurring the city's outlines, but his thoughts were crystal clear. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The Sunrise Imperial Hotel had unwittingly sparked something in him, something that wouldn't rest until real change was made. And Snoop Dogg wasn't the kind of man to let an opportunity for change slip away. As he navigated the rain-soaked streets, a faint smile returned to his lips. He had spent decades building his career on defying expectations, proving wrong anyone who had underestimated him. This hotel, with its polished facade and flawed culture, had just become the latest addition to his list of challenges. The plan wasn't fully formed yet, but the seeds were there, taking root in the fertile ground of determination. Tonight, he would rest. Tomorrow, he would begin to act. And the Sunrise Imperial Hotel would never be the same again. The next morning, the rain had subsided, leaving behind a damp chill in the air. Snoop Dogg returned to the vicinity of the Sunrise Imperial Hotel, his SUV parked inconspicuously across the street. From his vantage point, he could see the grand entrance and the steady stream of guests coming and going. He wasn't here to confront anyone, at least not yet. Instead, he intended to observe. Snoop sipped his coffee, the steaming cup resting in his hands as he watched. He wanted to understand if what he experienced the night before was an isolated incident or part of a deeper, systemic problem. It didn't take long for the first clue to reveal itself. A businesswoman in her late 30s, dressed in a sharp gray suit, approached the front desk. She looked harried, juggling her phone and a rolling suitcase as she spoke briefly with Alex. Within moments, Alex's smile widened, and he nodded enthusiastically. His hands moved deftly across the keyboard before producing a room key. She thanked him and hurried toward the elevators. Snoop's eyes narrowed slightly. That seemed standard enough, efficient service for a guest in need. But it didn't match his own experience from the night before. Another guest entered shortly afterward, a college-aged man with shaggy hair and an oversized hoodie. He was carrying a duffel bag that looked like it had seen better days. Despite his casual appearance, the young man received the same courteous service from Alex. With a few keystrokes, a quick exchange of words, and he too was handed a keycard without hesitation. Snoop felt his jaw tighten. The pattern was becoming clear. A third guest followed, a woman with a baby in her arms, her suitcase balanced precariously on a stroller. Her request at the desk took slightly longer, but Alex's attitude remained pleasant and accommodating. He even called over another staff member to assist her with her bags. Snoop leaned back in his seat, letting out a long, measured breath. It wasn't just about availability. It wasn't about timing or logistics. The service was selective and tailored to the guest standing in front of Alex. The memory of his own interaction with Alex replayed in his mind. The disinterested tone, the condescending smile, and the immediate dismissal. It wasn't just personal, it was cultural. This wasn't just a rude receptionist having a bad day. It was something far more insidious, a quiet but deliberate kind of exclusion. Alex wasn't acting in isolation. His behavior was a reflection of the environment he worked in, a place that seemingly tolerated or even encouraged this kind of conduct. Snoop's fingers drummed lightly on the steering wheel as he watched yet another guest walk away with a keycard and a friendly smile. He wasn't angry. Anger was fleeting and unproductive. What he felt was something deeper, resolve. This wasn't just about what had happened to him. It was about every traveler who had walked through those doors expecting fairness and dignity, only to be met with prejudice cloaked in politeness. Not everyone had the platform or resources to challenge it, but Snoop did. He had spent decades overcoming obstacles, defying expectations, and building an empire that stood as a testament to his resilience and vision. This hotel, with its gleaming facade and underlying flaws, would be no exception. Snoop pulled out his phone and began typing notes, his thoughts coalescing into a plan. He wasn't just going to challenge the system, he was going to change it. A knock on the passenger side window startled him slightly. He turned to see Lisa Reynolds, his longtime attorney and confidant, standing outside holding a leather portfolio. Snoop unlocked the door, and she slid into the seat beside him. "You called me late last night," Lisa said, her tone a mix of curiosity and concern. "What's going on?" Snoop handed her the coffee he had been sipping, motioning toward the hotel. "Take a look for yourself," he said simply. Lisa glanced at the grand entrance, watching as yet another guest was greeted with warm smiles and efficient service. Her brow furrowed slightly. "Looks like business as usual." "What am I missing?" "Business as usual," Snoop repeated with a dry chuckle. "That's exactly the problem." Over the next few minutes, he recounted the events of the previous night, the dismissive treatment he had received, and the contrast with how other guests were welcomed. Lisa listened intently, her sharp mind piecing together the implications even before he finished. "This isn't just bad customer service," she said thoughtfully. "It's a pattern, and if it's happening to you, it's happening to others." "Exactly," Snoop agreed. "And I'm not just going to call it out, I'm going to fix it." Lisa raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. "How do you plan to do that?" Snoop leaned back, a faint smile playing on his lips. "You remember that property we talked about a few months ago, the Sunrise Imperial? The chain that's been struggling?" Lisa nodded slowly, realization dawning on her face. "You want to buy it?" "I'm not just buying it," Snoop said, his voice steady with conviction. "I'm turning it into a statement." Lisa studied him for a moment, her lawyerly instincts kicking in. "This won't be easy, you know. Taking over a business is one thing. Changing its culture? That's a whole other challenge." "Good," Snoop replied. "If it were easy, it wouldn't be worth doing." Lisa sighed, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "All right, I'll get started on the paperwork. But you better be ready for some late nights." Snoop chuckled. "I've had plenty of those. What's a few more?" As Lisa began making notes on her tablet, Snoop turned his gaze back to the hotel. The Sunrise Imperial had been a symbol of exclusion for too long. But soon it would become something else, a beacon of fairness, respect, and inclusion. This wasn't just about correcting a personal slight. It was about setting a new standard, one that couldn't be ignored. The battle was just beginning, but Snoop was ready. The rain had stopped by the time Snoop Dogg pulled into the parking lot of a small diner on the outskirts of Long Beach. The neon sign above the entrance glowed red, casting a warm light onto the wet pavement. The place wasn't fancy, just the kind of spot that stayed open 24/7, serving endless coffee refills and comfort food to night owls and weary travelers. Snoop stepped inside, the bell above the door jingling softly. The smell of sizzling bacon and freshly brewed coffee filled the air, a sharp contrast to the tension brewing in his mind. He picked a booth by the window, the leather seat cool against his back, and set his laptop on the table. A waitress approached with a steaming mug of coffee, setting it down without a word. He nodded his thanks, his focus already shifting to the task at hand. The incident at the Sunrise Imperial still weighed heavily on him, but now it was more than a personal grievance. It was a call to action. Snoop wasn't the type to let an injustice slide, and this wasn't just about him. It was about everyone who had ever faced the quiet indignity of being dismissed or overlooked. He opened his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard as he began drafting notes. The plan was simple in concept but ambitious in scope. He wasn't just going to fix the problem. He was going to own it, literally. A few months back, during an investment meeting with his team, the Sunrise Imperial Hotel had come up as a potential acquisition. The property was part of a struggling chain, and rumors of its impending sale had circulated among those in the know. At the time, it hadn't seemed worth pursuing, a small fish compared to the global ventures that usually caught his attention. But now, things were different. Snoop grabbed his phone and dialed a number from memory. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Lisa Reynolds," the voice said crisply, a touch of curiosity laced in her tone. "It's me," Snoop said, his voice steady but urgent. "We need to move fast." Lisa didn't miss a beat. "All right. What's going on?" "I want the Sunrise Imperial," replied, cutting straight to the point. "I need the paperwork ready by morning." There was a pause on the other end of the line, followed by a faint chuckle. "The Sunrise Imperial? That's ambitious, even for you. You do realize the clock is ticking, right?" "I know," Snoop said firmly, "but this can't wait. We've talked about that place before. I've seen enough to know it's time to make a move." Lisa exhaled audibly, the sound of keys clacking faintly in the background as she pulled up the relevant files. "All right, let's get into it. The hotel's been struggling for a while, and the owners are eager to offload it. If we act quickly, we can probably secure it for less than market value." "Perfect," Snoop said. "Send me the terms as soon as you have them. I'll sign electronically if I have to." "You're really serious about this," Lisa remarked, a hint of admiration in her voice. "Dead serious," Snoop replied. "This isn't just another business deal, Lisa. This is personal." Lisa's tone shifted, her professionalism taking over. "Understood. I'll have my team start drafting the necessary documents immediately. But you know, this isn't just about buying a building. If you're going to change the culture, that's going to take time and resources." "Time and resources I've got," Snoop said confidently. "What I need now is the key to the front door." "All right," Lisa said. "You'll have it." Snoop ended the call, leaning back in his seat as he stared out the window. The rain had left streaks on the glass, refracting the glow of the diner's neon sign. For the first time that night, he felt a sense of clarity. The Sunrise Imperial wasn't just a hotel, it was a symbol of something much bigger. And Snoop was determined to transform it into a beacon of fairness and respect, a place where every guest felt valued, regardless of who they were or where they came from. Over the next few hours, Snoop remained in the diner, working tirelessly. He reviewed property reports, strategized potential renovations, and drafted ideas for staff training programs. This wasn't just about the physical space, it was about changing the entire ethos of the establishment. The waitress refilled his coffee without a word, her curious gaze lingering for a moment before she moved on. Snoop barely noticed, his focus laser-sharp. By the time dawn began to break, painting the sky with soft hues of orange and pink, Lisa called back. "It's done," she said, her voice laced with a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. "We've secured the terms. The Sunrise Imperial will be yours by the end of the day." Snoop closed his laptop, a faint smile crossing his lips. Good work, Lisa. I owe you one. Don't thank me yet, she replied. The real work starts now. Trust me, Snoop said, his tone resolute. I'm ready. He finished his now cold coffee, sliding out of the booth as the first rays of sunlight streamed through the diner's windows. As he stepped outside, the air felt fresher, lighter. The weight of the previous night's events had been replaced by a sense of purpose. The Sunrise Imperial had rejected him, but now it was his. Under his leadership, it would become a place that stood for the values he held dear: fairness, inclusivity, and respect. As he got into his SUV and drove away, Snoop couldn't help but smile. The journey was just beginning, but he knew one thing for certain: the Sunrise Imperial Hotel would never be the same again. The sun rose on Long Beach with a quiet brilliance, its golden rays cutting through the mist left behind by the previous night's rain. The streets were bustling with early morning commuters, their energy contrasting with the serene determination that radiated from Snoop Dogg as he pulled into the driveway of the Sunrise Imperial Hotel. This time, there was no trace of hesitation or frustration in his movements. He stepped out of his sleek black SUV, his posture relaxed but commanding. His outfit, a sharply tailored jacket in muted tones, added to his aura of authority. As he pushed the glass doors open, the golden glow of the lobby lights reflected off his sunglasses, creating an almost cinematic moment. Inside, the hotel was abuzz with activity, as staff prepared for another day of catering to their affluent guests. The polished marble floors gleamed, and the scent of roses still lingered faintly in the air. Snoop's entrance caused an immediate ripple of attention. Employees exchanged quick, curious glances, their movements slowing as they tried to place the tall, composed figure now surveying the room. At the front desk stood Alex, the same receptionist from the previous night. His slicked-back hair was as immaculate as ever, and his practiced smile was already in place as he greeted a guest checking out. If Alex noticed Snoop's arrival, he gave no sign of it, too focused on exuding his usual air of polished indifference. Snoop took his time walking through the lobby, his eyes scanning the space with a critical yet calm gaze. Every detail, the overly ornate decorations, the impersonal atmosphere, and the subtle tension in the staff's interactions, seemed to confirm what he had suspected all along. The hotel's surface-level elegance masked deeper flaws. He approached the front desk, his measured footsteps drawing Alex's attention at last. The receptionist glanced up, and for a split second his composure faltered. Recognition flickered in his eyes, quickly replaced by the same detached professionalism he had used the night before. "Good morning, sir," Alex greeted, his tone smooth but lacking the warmth he reserved for other guests. "How may I assist you today?" Snoop didn't respond immediately. Instead, he placed a sleek, black folder on the counter, its edges sharp and pristine. Slowly, deliberately, he opened it to reveal a stack of legal documents, stamped and signed. "I'm here to make an introduction," Snoop said, his voice calm yet firm, each word carrying weight. "My name is Snoop Dogg, and as of this morning, I am the new owner of the Sunrise Imperial Hotel." The room seemed to hold its breath. Alex's practiced smile froze, his expression quickly shifting to one of disbelief. I don't understand," he stammered, his usual slick confidence nowhere to be found. Snoop leaned in slightly, his gaze locking onto Alex's. "Let me make it simple for you," he said, his tone unwavering. "This hotel is now under my ownership. Last night I had the pleasure of experiencing firsthand how some of the staff treat potential guests. Let's just say, I wasn't impressed." Alex opened his mouth as if to protest, but Snoop raised a hand, silencing him. "No need to explain," Snoop continued. "Actions speak louder than words. And your actions? They said everything I needed to know." By now, a small crowd of staff had gathered near the lobby, their expressions a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Among them were housekeeping attendants, porters, and even a few managers. They exchanged whispered speculations, their eyes darting between Snoop and Alex. Snoop turned his attention to the assembled group, his voice rising just enough to carry across the lobby without losing its measured tone. "Let me be clear," he began, addressing the staff directly. "I believe in running businesses that stand for fairness, respect, and inclusivity. Unfortunately, this hotel has fallen short of that standard. But that's going to change, starting today." The tension in the room was palpable, but Snoop didn't let it linger. Every one of you will have the opportunity to grow and thrive in this new chapter, except for those who refuse to treat every guest with dignity," he continued, his gaze sweeping across the room. "I don't tolerate prejudice in any form." Snoop's eyes settled back on Alex, whose face had turned a shade paler. "Your actions last night have no place in the future of this hotel," Snoop said, his tone final. "You're dismissed, effective immediately." Alex's jaw dropped, his words catching in his throat. The other staff members looked on, some nodding subtly, others exchanging uneasy glances. The dismissal hung in the air, absolute and irrefutable. Snoop stepped back, allowing the weight of his words to sink in before continuing. "This isn't just about last night," he said, pacing slowly as he addressed the group. "This is about the culture of this hotel, the message it sends, and the experience it provides to every person who walks through those doors." He paused, letting the silence emphasize his next words. "From this moment forward, this hotel will represent respect and inclusion. That means change, starting with new policies and training programs for every member of the staff." He gestured toward Maria, a housekeeper who had been with the hotel for over a decade. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice softening slightly. "Maria," she replied, her voice tentative but steady. "Well, Maria," Snoop said, offering her a reassuring smile, "you and the rest of the team will undergo comprehensive training to ensure that every guest feels valued, no matter who they are or where they come from." Maria nodded, her initial apprehension giving way to a sense of hope. Snoop could see the subtle shifts in the expressions of the other staff members, their shoulders relaxing, their postures less rigid. "But let me be clear about one more thing," Snoop continued. "I'm not here to punish anyone unfairly. Mistakes happen, and growth is possible. If you're willing to embrace these changes, there's a place for you here. If not, it's better for all of us to part ways now." The room was silent as Snoop's words settled over the staff. He had made his expectations clear, but he had also extended an olive branch, a chance for redemption and progress. "This hotel has the potential to be more than just a place to sleep or hold conferences," Snoop said, his tone confident yet inspiring. "It can be a beacon, a symbol of what hospitality should be. And with the right team, I know we can make that happen." The staff exchanged glances, their murmurs a mix of relief and determination. Snoop knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but the foundation for change had been laid. As he turned to leave, the lobby felt different. Less like a place of rigid formality, and more like the beginning of something transformative. The Sunrise Imperial Hotel was on the brink of a new era, and Snoop Dogg was ready to lead the charge. The day Snoop Dogg officially became the owner of the Sunrise Imperial Hotel marked the beginning of a transformation that rippled through every corner of the establishment. Alex's abrupt dismissal had sent a clear message. Prejudice and exclusion had no place in the new chapter of the hotel's history. But Snoop knew that firing one person wouldn't solve the underlying problem. The real challenge lay in reshaping the hotel's culture, turning it into a beacon of fairness, respect, and genuine hospitality. Standing in the middle of the lobby that morning, Snoop addressed the staff once again, his tone steady but filled with purpose. "This isn't just about removing one bad apple," he began. "It's about planting new seeds and making sure this place grows into something we can all be proud of." The gathered employees, housekeepers, porters, managers, and front desk clerks listened intently. Their expressions ranged from apprehension to cautious optimism. Among them stood Maria, a housekeeper who had worked at the hotel for over a decade. Her hands were clasped in front of her, and her posture was modest, but there was a quiet strength in her gaze. "Maria," Snoop called out, his eyes meeting hers. "You've been here a long time. Tell me, what's the one thing you've wanted to change about this place?" Maria hesitated for a moment, the attention making her slightly uneasy. But then she straightened her back, her voice steady as she answered, "I've always thought we should treat every guest the same, no matter who they are or where they come from. And, not just the guests, the staff too." Snoop nodded, a faint smile crossing his face. "Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Starting today, that's the foundation we're building on." He turned back to address the group, his voice firm. "We're going to rebuild this place from the ground up, not just the walls and the furniture, but the way we treat people, the way we think about hospitality. And it starts with all of you. Snoop then outlined his plan, detailing a comprehensive program for staff training. Experts in diversity, equity, and inclusion would be brought in to conduct workshops and interactive sessions. These wouldn't be dry lectures. They would be conversations and opportunities for everyone to share their experiences and learn from one another. The training would emphasize empathy and understanding, teaching staff how to handle a wide range of situations with kindness and professionalism. It would also challenge them to confront and unlearn biases, creating a culture of genuine respect and inclusivity. This isn't about checking a box, Snoop said, pacing slowly as he spoke. This is about creating a workplace where everyone feels valued, guests and employees alike. And if you're willing to embrace that, there's a place for you here. If not, he paused, letting the weight of his words settle. You're free to leave. The room was silent for a moment, but the energy in the air had shifted. There was a sense of possibility, a glimmer of hope that hadn't been there before. Maria, who had spent years enduring subtle slights and watching others face similar treatment, felt a surge of something she hadn't expected. Pride. For the first time, she felt like her voice mattered. Over the following weeks, the transformation began to take shape. Snoop didn't just delegate the changes. He was hands-on, attending training sessions alongside the staff and leading by example. His presence was both inspiring and grounding, showing the team that this wasn't just a business decision for him. It was personal. Maria quickly emerged as a standout during the training sessions. Her natural empathy and problem-solving skills made her a role model for others. She shared her own experiences candidly, offering insights into how small acts of kindness could make a big difference in someone's day. One day, during a group discussion, Maria recounted a story about a family who had stayed at the hotel years ago. They had arrived late at night, exhausted from a long drive, and their reservation had been lost in the system. Despite being off duty, Maria had stepped in to help, finding them a room and even bringing them extra blankets for their young children. I didn't think much of it at the time, Maria said, her voice steady but emotional. But a week later, they sent a letter thanking me. They said it was the first time they'd felt truly welcome in a long time. Her story resonated deeply with the group, sparking a conversation about the importance of small gestures and the impact they could have. By the end of the session, it was clear that Maria wasn't just a dedicated employee, she was a leader. Recognizing her potential, Snoop promoted Maria to the role of assistant manager, a position that gave her the authority to mentor others and help implement the new policies. The announcement was met with applause from the staff, many of whom admired Maria's quiet strength and unwavering commitment to fairness. I never thought I'd have this kind of opportunity, Maria admitted to Snoop during one of their check-ins. You earned it, Snoop replied simply, his tone genuine. And you're just getting started. Word of the changes at the Sunrise Imperial began to spread, drawing attention from both former guests and curious newcomers. The hotel's reputation, once tarnished by whispers of exclusion and prejudice, started to shift. Reviews highlighted not just the luxurious accommodations, but the warmth and respect that now define every interaction. Through it all, Snoop remained focused, never losing sight of the bigger picture. The Sunrise Imperial wasn't just a business venture, it was a statement, a challenge to the industry to do better. Maria's rise became a symbol of the hotel's transformation, proving that change was possible when people were given the chance to grow. Her story, along with those of other staff members who thrived under the new culture, became part of the hotel's identity, a reminder that respect and inclusion weren't just ideals to aspire to, they were practices to live by. As the hotel continued its journey of renewal, Snoop knew there was still work to be done. But for the first time, the future felt bright, not just for the Sunrise Imperial, but for everyone who walked through its doors. The weeks following Snoop Dogg's acquisition of the Sunrise Imperial Hotel were nothing short of transformative. The once fading symbol of exclusivity and thinly veiled prejudice began its metamorphosis into something far more meaningful. A beacon of fairness, respect, and inclusivity. The changes were swift, sweeping, and driven by Snoop's unrelenting vision for a better future. not just for the hotel, but for the industry at large. Snoop didn't approach the task passively. He was in the trenches alongside the team, working tirelessly to ensure that every change reflected the core values he wanted to instill. This wasn't just about fresh paint and polished fixtures, though those came too. It was about creating a culture that would resonate with anyone who stepped foot in the hotel. The first major overhaul came with the interiors. The grandiose but cold and impersonal decor was replaced with something more welcoming. The lobby, which had once been intimidating with its excessive opulence, now featured warm, earthy tones, soft lighting, and inviting seating arrangements. Fresh flowers adorned every corner, their bright colors adding life to the space. A mural depicting diverse cultural symbols was painted on one wall, serving as a visual representation of the hotel's new commitment to inclusion. The guest rooms underwent similar transformations. Gone were the outdated, overly formal furnishings, replaced with modern, comfortable designs that felt luxurious yet approachable. Each room now featured small, personalized touches, a handwritten welcome note, a selection of locally sourced snacks, and a guide highlighting nearby cultural attractions. But it wasn't just the aesthetics that changed. The heart of the transformation lay in the people. Snoop's training program became the backbone of the hotel's new culture. Under his guidance, every employee, from the front desk staff to the housekeeping team, underwent intensive workshops on empathy, cultural awareness, and hospitality. The sessions weren't just about teaching skills, they were about fostering understanding. Employees shared their own experiences, discussed their biases, and learned how to approach each interaction with an open mind. Snoop was present for many of these sessions, his involvement inspiring the team to take the lessons to heart. "This isn't about checking boxes," Snoop reminded them during one of the workshops. "It's about treating people with the dignity they deserve. If we can do that, this place will become more than just a hotel. It'll be a home for everyone who walks through those doors." Maria, now the assistant manager, played a pivotal role in the training process. Her natural ability to connect with others and her willingness to share her own story made her a trusted figure among the staff. She led discussions with LM Authority, encouraging her colleagues to embrace the new vision, while offering support to those who struggled with the changes. One of Maria's key contributions was the creation of a guest-first initiative, which emphasized proactive service and personalized care. The initiative encouraged employees to anticipate guests' needs and go above and beyond to make their stay memorable. The results were almost immediate. Guests began leaving glowing reviews, praising not only the updated facilities but also the warmth and professionalism of the staff. "It feels like they actually care," one guest wrote. "This isn't just another luxury hotel. It's a place where you're treated like family." Word of the Sunrise Imperial's transformation spread quickly, drawing the attention of both former patrons and curious newcomers. Local news outlets picked up the story, highlighting Snoop's hands-on approach and the remarkable turnaround. One feature article described the hotel as a shining example of what can happen when inclusivity becomes more than just a buzzword. For Snoop, the most rewarding moments came from witnessing the tangible effects of the changes. One afternoon, he was walking through the lobby when he noticed a young couple checking in. They looked nervous, their clothes modest, and their suitcase scuffed from years of use. As the couple approached the front desk, the receptionist, one of the newer employees trained under the revamped program, greeted them with a genuine smile. "Welcome to the Sunrise Imperial," she said warmly. "We're so glad to have you here. Let me get you checked in." The couple's relief was palpable, their shoulders relaxing as they exchanged grateful glances. Snoop watched from a distance, his heart swelling with pride. This was exactly what he had envisioned, a place where every guest, regardless of their background or circumstances, felt valued and respected. Back in his office, Snoop reviewed the latest reports on the hotel's performance. Occupancy rates were up, guest satisfaction scores had skyrocketed, and the team was thriving under the new culture. But what stood out most to him was personal stories from guests and employees alike. One letter came from a family who had recently stayed at the hotel. The parents wrote about how their child, who had special needs, was treated with extraordinary kindness by the staff. "Your team made us feel seen and supported," the letter read. "For the first time in a long time, we were able to relax and just enjoy being a family. Thank you." Another note came from a staff member who had initially been skeptical of the changes. "I didn't think this was going to work," the letter admitted. "But I've learned so much about myself and others. I'm proud to work here now." For Snoop, these stories were more valuable than any profit margin or business accolade. They were proof that the Sunrise Imperial was becoming what he had always known it could be, a place where people came together, free of judgment and full of hope. As the hotel's reputation continued to grow, Snoop remained grounded. He knew that the work wasn't over. Maintaining the new culture required constant effort and vigilance. But he also knew that he had built a solid foundation, one that could withstand challenges and inspire others to follow suit. Standing in the newly renovated lobby one morning, Snoop took a moment to soak in the atmosphere. Guests were checking in and out, their interactions with the staff marked by genuine warmth and respect. The once intimidating space now felt alive, buzzing with the energy of a community that truly cared. Maria approached him, holding a clipboard with the latest survey results. Over 90% of guests mentioned the service as the highlight of their stay. She said, her voice tinged with pride. "That's what I like to hear," Snoop replied with a smile. "It's not just about the building, it's about the people in it." As Maria walked away to attend to her next task, Snoop glanced around the lobby one more time. This place was no longer just a hotel. It was a testament to the power of change, a reminder that fairness and respect could transform even the most rigid systems. And for Snoop, it was only the beginning. Alex paced nervously in his small apartment, the dim light filtering through the blinds highlighting the tension etched on his face. It had been weeks since his dismissal from the Sunrise Imperial Hotel, and the reality of his situation was beginning to weigh heavily on him. In the days following his public termination, word of his behavior had spread rapidly. The hotel industry, a tightly knit network where reputations traveled fast, had taken notice. Alex's once polished resume, filled with years of front desk experience, now carried a stain that was hard to ignore. He had applied to several hotels and resorts in the area, hoping to land another role that would allow him to maintain the lifestyle he was accustomed to. But the rejections came swiftly, some polite and others blunt. One manager even told him outright, "We don't tolerate the kind of behavior you were let go for." For the first time in his career, Alex was forced to confront the consequences of his actions. He had always prided himself on his ability to maintain an air of professionalism, but now he realized that professionalism without respect was hollow. Unable to secure a position in the upscale establishments he once thrived in, Alex found himself taking a job at a small roadside motel. The pay was a fraction of what he was used to, and the responsibilities were far more menial. Yet, the experience proved humbling. At the motel, Alex encountered guests from all walks of life, many of whom were facing challenges far greater than he had ever considered. Families struggling to make ends meet, travelers stranded due to emergencies, and individuals seeking shelter for the night. It was a stark reminder of the humanity he had overlooked during his time at the Sunrise Imperial. One evening, as Alex checked in a mother and her young child, the boy smiled up at him and said, "Thank you, sir." The simplicity of the gesture struck a chord in Alex that he hadn't expected. For the first time, he began to understand what Snoop Dogg meant when he talked about dignity and fairness. Meanwhile, back at the Sunrise Imperial Hotel, the transformation continued to flourish. Maria, now serving as assistant manager, had fully embraced her new role. Her dedication to fostering a positive and inclusive environment made her a cornerstone of the hotel's success. Maria's journey hadn't been an easy one. For years, she had quietly endured the subtle biases and dismissive attitudes that permeated the hotel's old culture. But now, she stood as a shining example of what could happen when hard work and integrity were given the opportunity to thrive. Under Maria's guidance, the staff began to mirror her approach to hospitality, one rooted in empathy and a genuine desire to serve. She took time to mentor her colleagues, sharing her experiences and offering practical advice on how to handle challenging situations. During one staff meeting, Maria shared a story that resonated deeply with her team. "There was a time when I didn't think I mattered here," she admitted, "but someone believed in me, and that made all the difference. Now it's our turn to do the same for each other and for our guests." Her words struck a chord, inspiring the staff to see themselves as part of something bigger than their individual roles. Together, they worked to ensure that every guest who walked through the doors felt valued, regardless of their background or circumstances. One day, Snoop called Maria into his office to discuss her progress. The room, now adorned with warm lighting and subtle touches of modern design, felt as inviting as the rest of the hotel. "You've done an incredible job, Maria," Snoop said, leaning back in his chair. "The team respects you, and the guests love the changes you've implemented. I knew you were the right person for this role." Maria smiled, a mix of gratitude and determination in her expression. "Thank you, Mr. Dogg. I couldn't have done it without your support and without the team's willingness to embrace change." Snoop nodded, his tone reflective. "It's not just about the hotel anymore. It's about showing people what's possible when we lead with respect and inclusion." "You've become a big part of that message, Maria." Maria's promotion had also become a source of inspiration for the other employees, many of whom now saw new possibilities for their own careers. Her rise through the ranks served as a reminder that hard work and integrity could lead to meaningful opportunities. As the hotel's reputation continued to grow, Maria's leadership became synonymous with the Sunrise Imperial's renewed identity. Guests often mentioned her by name in their reviews, praising her warmth and attentiveness. But it wasn't just Maria's story that stood out. The entire staff had become more cohesive, united by a shared purpose. From the concierge team to the housekeeping crew, every employee took pride in their role, knowing they were part of something greater than themselves. For Snoop, watching Maria's growth and the staff's transformation was a source of immense pride. The Sunrise Imperial Hotel was no longer just a business venture. It was a testament to the power of change and the importance of standing up for what was right. As for Alex, his journey was far from over. While his time at the roadside motel was humbling, it also became a period of reflection and growth. Slowly, he began to understand the impact of his previous behavior and the importance of treating every person with respect. One evening, Alex sat alone in his small apartment, scrolling through news articles about the Sunrise Imperial's resurgence. Seeing the success of the hotel and the praise for Maria was bittersweet. It reminded him of what he had lost, but also of what he could strive to become. Back at the Sunrise Imperial, Snoop stood in the newly renovated lobby, watching guests and staff interact with an ease and warmth that had once been absent. A family arrived, their young child clutching a stuffed toy as they were greeted warmly by the front desk staff. Snoop smiled, his heart light as he observed the scene. The Sunrise Imperial had become everything he'd envisioned, a place where respect and dignity weren't just ideals but everyday practices. As he turned to leave the lobby, Snoop made a silent vow to keep pushing for change, not just within the hotel but wherever it was needed. The Sunrise Imperial Hotel stood gleaming in the soft light of the morning, its renovated facade a symbol of transformation. The polished glass reflected a new story, one of redemption and inclusion, crafted by the efforts of Snoop Dogg, Maria, and a team united by a shared vision. Inside, the hum of activity filled the air, but it was no longer tinged with tension or indifference. Instead, it was a symphony of warmth and purpose. In the weeks following the hotel's rebirth, its influence extended far beyond its walls. Guests left with glowing impressions, and word spread quickly about the exceptional service and welcoming environment. But perhaps the greatest impact was on the people who made the Sunrise Imperial their workplace, a team that now saw themselves as stewards of something truly special. One morning, as Snoop walked through the lobby, he was stopped by a young man holding a newspaper. He looked slightly nervous but determined, the paper tucked tightly under his arm. "Excuse me, Mr. Dogg," the man said, his voice steady despite his obvious awe. "I just wanted to say thank you." Snoop raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Thank me? For what? For this, the man said, holding up the newspaper. The front page featured a headline about the Sunrise Imperial's transformation, accompanied by a photo of the new, vibrant lobby. I'm studying hospitality management, the man continued, and this story inspired me. It reminded me why I chose this path in the first place. Snoop smiled, placing a hand on the man's shoulder. That's what it's all about, man, he said. Changing the game, one step at a time. Keep at it, you've got the right mindset. The encounter left Snoop with a renewed sense of purpose. He had always believed in using his platform to make a difference, but the Sunrise Imperial had shown him just how far that impact could reach. Maria, meanwhile, had fully settled into her role as assistant manager. Her leadership style, firm but compassionate, had earned her the trust and admiration of both her colleagues and the guests. She often stayed late to help newer employees or brainstorm ways to improve the hotel's operations. During one of their regular check-ins, Snoop asked her how she felt about the changes. It's like night and day, Maria said with a smile. The team feels like a family now. People aren't just working for a paycheck, they actually care about what we're building here. That's all you, Snoop replied. You set the tone, and people follow your lead. I couldn't have done this without you. Maria's cheeks flushed slightly, but her smile widened. Thank you, Mr. Dogg. That means a lot. Snoop leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. You know, I've been thinking. We've turned this place around, but we're not stopping here. I want this to be the blueprint for other places too. We can show people what's possible when you lead with respect. Maria nodded, her own excitement building. I think that's a great idea. If we can make it work here, we can make it work anywhere. As the weeks turned into months, Snoop's vision for the Sunrise Imperial began to influence other parts of the hospitality industry. Conferences and workshops hosted at the hotel drew professionals from across the country, eager to learn about its innovative approach to inclusivity and guest care. The staff's newfound confidence was evident in their interactions with guests. Maria, in particular, continued to shine, becoming the face of the hotel's success story. She was featured in articles and interviews, her story of perseverance and growth inspiring others to believe in the power of change. One afternoon, as Snoop stood by the lobby's expansive windows, he watched a family checking in. The father, a man with a strong resemblance to Snoop himself, paused to shake the front desk clerk's hand. His two young children clutched stuffed animals, their wide eyes taking in the grandeur of the lobby. It's incredible what you've done here, the man said, catching Snoop's eye. He walked over, his handshake firm and sincere. This place feels different, like it's for everyone. That's exactly what we were going for, Snoop replied, his tone warm. This isn't just a hotel anymore, it's a home. The man nodded, his expression thoughtful. You know, I heard about what happened before you took over. I'm glad you didn't let it slide. People like you give the rest of us hope. As the family moved on, Snoop turned back toward the lobby, taking in the sight of guests mingling with staff, their interactions marked by genuine care and connection. The Sunrise Imperial had become everything he'd envisioned, and more. Even Alex's story, though fraught with hardship, became a testament to the lessons that could be learned through accountability. After months at the roadside motel, he began volunteering at a local shelter, working with people who had faced far greater struggles than his own. It was a humbling experience that slowly reshaped his perspective. Back at the Sunrise Imperial, Maria walked through the halls, clipboard in hand, stopping occasionally to check in with the staff. She paused by a housekeeper who was setting up a room, offering encouragement and advice. Her presence was a reminder of how far the hotel had come and the people who had made it possible. As the day wound down, Snoop stood on the hotel's rooftop terrace, gazing out at the city. The skyline was bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, a fitting backdrop for the journey that had brought him here. The Sunrise Imperial Hotel wasn't just a building anymore. It was a living testament to the power of resilience, vision, and the belief that change, no matter how daunting, was always worth pursuing. With a final glance at the horizon, Snoop made a silent vow to continue leading by example, to keep pushing for a world where respect and fairness weren't just aspirations, but realities. And with that, he turned back toward the bustling hotel, ready to embrace whatever challenges and triumphs lay ahead. If this story touched your heart, we'd love to hear from you. Did it inspire you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Type 1 if it resonated, or 0 if it didn't. Your feedback means the world and helps us bring you the stories that matter most. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the meaningful stories we have coming your way. Tell us what you think, and feel free to share your own stories too.